How's your day, man?
It's really good, man. I think I told you last week I launched or made a post about that program.
Yeah.
Uh, it fucking sold out in a couple days, and I created another group for September, and that's booking up. Like it's wild.
Crazy, eh?
It's really cool. And like there's some really awesome people in it too.
Yeah.
Like one girl works for Hockey Canada, and like wants to go through it herself, but then like also like put it through, like use it for athletes and stuff.
That's that's gotta be like, just to take that in, like to know that like what you're developing is being used for like elite athletes is like, it's crazy, eh?
Yeah, it's nuts. It's just, I think the biggest thing that people are interested in, it's like a mix between like life coaching and therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
I noticed that not everybody in the group that you guys got is like sports psych per se, right? It's more like life coach as well.
yeah. Yeah. So like it's been really cool. I think one of the biggest reasons why people are interested is because like I'm not a therapist, like they can relate to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like the way that things are broken down really resonates with them.
Yeah.
So it's been really, really cool. And then from like the athlete side, you know, those guys have all these resources. They've got the psychologist, they've got the best of everything, but they don't kind of have something like this that kind of helps them both inside and outside of sport.
Right.
So I think that's where the biggest interest has come from. And it's just been like, it's so cool. Like I'm getting like people from like businesses and teams and universities and stuff are reaching out too. And it's like awesome. Like I haven't even really posted about it yet.
And that's all really from, like, I gotta imagine, stemming from you creating the Head First Movement brand. Like, it's crazy, like how much the power of social media and branding, the opportunities that it arises, right? Like if you had never taken that step to put yourself out of social media and the Head First Movement and whatnot, I'm not sure how much of this would have been feasible, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's obviously like the power of branding, but it's just being yourself.
Yeah.
Like it's literally just putting yourself out there and being authentic and taking off that mask. And when you do that, people can sense it.
Yeah, 100% people can tell on social media who's putting up that fake front of this like lifestyle that they don't actually live, and who's being authentic. And I think you can tell who's being authentic because they talk about the good and the bad, whereas people that I think are a bit more fake, they just talk about the good.
Exactly. Like I'm human too. And I think even in terms of like getting on a call and just like connecting with people, nothing's scripted. Like it's just like a casual conversation. And then, you know, I'm asking them about them. I'm getting to know them. We shoot the shit for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I ask them what like piqued their interest. And then we walk through like the basics of the program. Yeah. And then by the end of the call, they're just like, yeah, where do I sign up? It's just like, it's like so cool, but it's like, it doesn't even feel like work because it's just so, I don't know, in alignment, I guess. It's just like the coolest feeling.
Yeah. And for people that are going to listen to this, where can they find that program? Obviously your Instagram, right?
Yeah, just Instagram right now. Like I said, I haven't really launched it yet. So,
yeah.
I mean, there will be like a landing page and stuff, but right now there's nothing. It's just, you know, shoot me a DM and we'll hop on.
And that's crazy how much traction you can get just through DMing on Instagram, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. And I honestly kind of like having it that way because it's just more organic. I don't want to have some like crazy process and application and all of that. It's literally, it's simple shit. Like we're going to hop on a call. We're going to chat about what's going on and just like get to know each other. If it's a cool fit, if it's a good fit, great. If it's not, then that's cool too. And
yeah,
I guess the one thing as well with the program is I want to make sure that everyone who's in it is a solid fit. So, you know, if somebody's not a good fit for it, I'm going to tell them straight up. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of power in that, but, yeah, I guess.
And that's all about being authentic as well, right? Like some people that are just in it for the money per se, or for the branding or the social media attention, they'll take on whoever they can really, even though it's not a good fit, right? But I think part of being authentic is having those, I don't want to call them tough conversations, but just being straight up with people and letting them know what it is, type of thing.
I'm quick to call it out too. Like if somebody's like faking it, I'll just straight up, I'll just call them out on it. Yeah. And that's the thing is like with this program, it's like you're checking your ego at the door. Mm-hmm. We're all being ourselves. I want you to be honest with yourself and honest with me. There's zero judgment. And it's just like a cool group where we can all vibe off each other every week and kind of go through this process of self-discovery and empowerment. And I can give you some tools to figure some shit out that you've been trying to figure out for a while.
It's dope. Yeah, it's dope. For those listeners that aren't familiar with your brand, the Head First Movement, give a bit about the backstory of how it started. I know we talked about it a bit. For those that are completely new to it, though, to give a bit of a brief backstory, how it started, what the main missions or goals you're trying to accomplish with it, and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, Head First, I started it last summer. I've pivoted direction a few times now, but to give you a bit of a backstory as to like why I started it in the first place, growing up, played every sport under the sun. As I got older, hockey took a bit of a priority. I wasn't that great. I didn't play professional, but I did play AAA, and I did the whole like junior hockey thing as well. During that time, through hits and fights and all that stuff, I had a few concussions and never really thought anything of them. They never really kept me out for longer than a month. But around the age of 20, so like second, third year university, I started to notice like the signs and symptoms of depression. And within a few short months, I found myself quitting hockey, leaving university, basically drinking every day. I was just in a really awful place, and it was really hard to describe because I had no idea why I was feeling that way. And, just a lot of things were really falling apart.
Do you remember some of those like exact symptoms you had? Because I think like depression, everybody kind of has an understanding of what depression is, but I think it varies somewhat person to person.
Yeah. And there's a difference between having like a bad day and like actually being depressed.
Yeah.
For me, it started off with my sleep. I couldn't sleep at night. I was constantly anxious. I didn't want to go to class. I wanted to isolate myself and not socialize. Those are, I'd say, the two biggest things. Then I started drinking, and then drinking became a habit and a crutch. Those were the kind of the biggest things. And just like crazy anxiety. I'd wake up like within a couple months, man, like I'd wake up literally crying, wouldn't want to get out of bed, wouldn't shower. I was a mess. And eventually I was lucky enough. My parents, knew that something was going on, and stepped in, and with their help, we started looking for answers.
Were you still playing hockey at that time, or were you hockey had already passed? Yeah,
it was like September or whatever. Training camp was over. The season was just starting, and I quit. I just didn't want to go anymore. So I just texted the GM because I didn't even want to face him face to face. I just texted him. I was like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Was that like spur of the moment, or was something that had been building up over maybe days, months, years?
Yeah. Over the span of maybe like a month or so, I just became less and less interested in it. Mm-hmm. I wasn't the best player on the team either. So it wasn't like the coaches and the GMs were heartbroken. I'm sure they missed having me in the locker room and stuff. I was like a part of the team that way, but I ended up just texting the GM, and I was done. Like I just didn't want to play anymore. And he asked if I was going to come back. I said, I don't think so. And that's kind of how it ended.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, with the help of my parents, we started looking for answers. And I ended up moving back home, back to Southampton where I grew up. And naturally, the first stop was the family doctor. So I kind of walked in there, unpacked how I was feeling to the best of my ability, without blinking an eye. He goes, you have depression, there's a chemical imbalance in your brain. I'm going to give you this pill. It's going to solve all your problems. So I started taking it, with high hopes and expectations. And to be honest with you, it did absolutely nothing. And that was the start of, to make a long story short, that was the start of 3 years and 30 plus medical professionals trying to find an answer to the problem. So over that time, I saw naturopaths, cognitive behavioral therapists, psychologists. I saw a hypnotist at one point. Like literally I was willing to try anything and do anything to get out of that rut. And nothing seemed to work. But about 2 years into that process, I had some blood work done. Finally. And my testosterone level came back at 0. And the doctor at the time just kind of looked at the blood test. He's like, oh, don't worry about it, man. You're a healthy guy. Like, it's just a mistake. Like, there's nothing wrong here. But
when you say 0, is that like 1, 2, 3, or like legit 0?
Legit 0. So the level in Canada is between 10 and 27. Mine came back at legitimately 0. So I guess from his perspective, it was kind of hard to believe. He's probably never seen anything like it, especially with a guy my age.
Yeah.
So he just kind of like wrote it off and said it was a mistake. But, me getting that test back, I was like, okay, like let's at least check this out. So although he was resistant, we did another test and the same thing came back and he goes, "Oh shit, I think we have a problem here." So he referred me to an endocrinologist and I waited 6 months to get in to go see this guy, and walked into his office with my parents, and he looked at me and he said, the first thing he said was that I wasn't going to help. And I asked him why, and he accused me of taking steroids because of my physical appearance.
And I guess for those that aren't too familiar with steroids, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you take steroids, obviously, like, it pumps up your testosterone momentarily, but then I guess it burns out your adrenal system or your adrenal glands, as a way to put it, or pituitary glands, whatever it is. But basically, you have a drop off in testosterone after you get off the steroids.
Kind of, yeah. So I didn't know this at the time because I've never done steroids, but basically I didn't know this, but when you inject synthetic testosterone in your body, your brain goes, "Oh, well, we've got this now. We don't need to produce our own," and your natural production gets shut off.
Yeah.
So that's what he thought was happening with me. He thought that I was juicing and that I came off of it, and that was the reason my body wasn't producing it. So he wrote me off as a typical patient because I didn't look like I didn't really look like a 10-year-old boy, and I didn't look like I wasn't a 65-year-old man. So yeah, he wrote me off as a patient. It was a really awful situation, and I left his office basically broken. I was so frustrated. At that point, I was downtown Toronto at the mental health hospital a couple times, and it was just, I felt fucking hopeless. With the help of my parents, we went to go see another endocrinologist 3 months after that, and the same thing happened again. And yeah, I mean, it was really rough.
Yeah. And when you were staying at the mental health hospital, were you like inpatient there, or were you outpatient?
I just stayed, like, it was like a couple nights. So it was like a crisis thing. And like,
okay,
we go in there and, I was in a room surrounded with individuals, and, I was there for a couple of days or whatever. And then left with my parents and went home under their supervision.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucked. And it's a weird situation too, because, you think before you're in that situation, you never think you'd be there. Right. Like, not in a million years. And then you're there and you're like, holy fuck. Like,
it all just hits you at once, right?
Just hits you at once. You're like, oh my God, like, I'm like these other people too. It was wild. But anyway, so
was there any part of you that like rejected it, to a sense, that you were like, how you mentioned, like, you're kind of like these other people that are at the mental health hospital, like, any part of you rejected it? Was it hard for you to kind of come to terms with it?
It was hard for me to come to terms with it because I always knew inside of me that I was going to get better, and that I wasn't going to be here long, and this wasn't me. I knew that something was off. So that gave me comfort. But at the same time, when I was there, I recognized, like, holy shit, I have a problem. Like, this needs to get fixed. And it's more than just like a normal mental health issue or like a bout of depression or anxiety. Like, it was real. And, there were multiple times during that 3-year span that I will get into it later, but, I didn't want to live anymore. And I drank like crazy. I drank myself to sleep multiple times, thought about doing it a million different ways and never did. So I'm very lucky that I had an awesome family, but it was really tough. But yeah, thanks to my parents, we ended up getting a referral to a third endocrinologist named Dr. Comer in Burlington. This experience was completely different. I didn't know this, but he was the head doctor for the Toronto Rock and works a lot with athletes. And yeah, so I walked in there a couple months after that second endocrinologist, and first question he asked me was if I played sports. And I was like, why are you asking me this, man? Like, we're not here to talk about that. But, of course I answered yes. And then he asked me what I played. I said hockey. And then he asked me how many concussions I had. I said, well, at least 3. And I guarantee you I played through a few more. And he goes, okay, I think I know the answer. I think I know the problem. So basically Comer determined that from my head injuries, there was inflammation caused in my brain. And that inflammation led to the dysfunction of my pituitary. And your pituitary is the part of your brain responsible for hormone production, like testosterone, growth hormone, estrogen, all that kind of stuff. So he basically put the link together between the concussions and all the shit that I was going through. And he put me on testosterone replacement therapy. I started injections that day. And within a month, I was back to myself. It was like a night and day difference. I could sleep. I was motivated. I was driven. I was happy. I wanted to hang out with my friends again. I could think. It was honestly amazing.
Yeah.
Within about 3-4 months, I was off all medication and felt like I had my life back. But yeah, I mean, to get back to why I started this whole thing, during that time period, 4 guys I played hockey with actually committed suicide. And although I couldn't be sure that they went through the exact same thing that I did, I thought that by sharing my experience, I could potentially help somebody else. So I did my best to package up, I guess, my recovery into a long-winded Facebook post, and I put that out to the world. And to my surprise, it got a lot of attention. I had about 3,000 shares in the first week. And, from that, I've had thousands of conversations with people all over the world about this stuff, and have been able to point hundreds of people in the right direction when it comes to getting treatment. So, that's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. And it's just been really cool being able to learn more about this stuff and, just to genuinely help people. So this was about 4 years ago when I did that. And, I always kind of knew that I wanted to do something with it. And last summer was when I finally said, I'm going to start something here. And that's when I created the brand. So originally the mission of the brand was to make the world aware of the impact concussions have on hormones and mental health, because, that was what specifically happened to me. But I quickly realized that, hormones are fucking complicated. A lot of people don't resonate with them, and it's very hard to talk about.
Right.
So the direction shifted a few times, and now I'm in a place where I've more or less merged the personal brand, or more or less merged headfirst with my personal brand. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of 3 core pillars that I focus on. So number 1 is the awareness piece. So I do this by not only sharing my story, but other people's as well. And, one core element of that is, we always talk about how courageous speaking up is and how it's such a hard thing to do. But every time we do that, we just reinforce how hard it is in the first place. So the core message that I want to get across when I speak about my story or share messages like that is that it's actually just the cool thing to do. It's the smart thing to do, and that, we only have one brain. We should take care of it.
So it's also the authentic, like we talked about a bit before, it's the authentic thing to do, right?
Exactly.
It seems so authentic when somebody's able to open up like that. Like, I think the emotional connection that somebody can make with that person, with that story, is like 100 times greater than if they're posting about something that wasn't as emotional or 100%. Something that's not as authentic.
Yeah, it creates space. It creates space for other people to raise their hand as well. So I'd encourage, if anyone listening has ever gone through that and wants to speak about it, talk to me. I'm more than happy for that. The second pillar of Headfirst is all about resources. So as I quickly found out, it's very difficult to find trusted people and services and products that can actually make a difference. So I've created a short list of those that I refer people to if they need clinical help. Mm-hmm. And then, the third element is the Head to Heart program. So it's helping people get out of their head and dive into their heart to develop mental clarity and build and break habits and to create real positive change. That's kind of where I'm at with Headfirst. That's where the brand's taken me within the year.
Yeah.
But I finally feel like it's been, it's in complete alignment, and, I can't wait to keep fucking growing it.
Just keep going. Yeah. When you mentioned that when you walked into Dr. Comer's office, hope I got that name correct. Was Dr. Comer, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he kind of like knew almost right away what the issue was, but you had gone through 3 years and 30 plus professionals and nobody could find out the issue. I think it really speaks to, well, A, how prevalent the issue is because Dr. Comer was able to almost diagnose it right away, but B, how unknown it is, at the same time. Like it's that weird balance, right? Where so many people probably deal with something similar, but it's not known what the issue is. And especially in contact sports, like lacrosse is a brutal sport, contact wise. Hockey, I got to imagine football plays a role as well. Any contact sport. And me, before I speak into you, I never really put the 2 and 2 together, of like the actual hormones being affected by the brain. Like sometimes when you hear stuff like CTE and stuff, it kind of seems more like memory stuff, and people have short-term memory loss or they forget certain games they play or anything. But I never made that link between the brain and hormones, and it's really where all the hormones in your body are produced, right? So
yeah, I mean,
it's just so fascinating.
It makes total sense. It's unfortunate that it's not taught more often, that more people aren't aware of it. But it makes sense. Your pituitary gland is in your brain. It's in your head. When you're getting hit in the head, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that can happen. So, Yeah, it's just a matter of making that link and that connection and making people aware of it. But it's not even just, since posting that, like I said, I've had thousands of conversations with people, and it's not just athletes in contact sports. It's, soccer players, it's bull riders, it's normal people who get into car accidents, people slip and fall in the bathtub. It's anyone with a head injury can have that kind of stuff. And approximately 20% of people will have some sort of hormone dysfunction 6 months after their injury. So it's a lot more common than we think. And a lot of people don't even check their hormones when they're looking at answers for their mental health issues. If a doctor would have asked me, have you had a concussion? The first time I went in to talk about my depression, I would have shortlisted 3 years. Right. So,
right.
The awareness is a huge part of it. But people also have to take action too. We can talk about stuff all day, but I guess there's the two parts of it.
Yeah. And it through, after we spoke a bit last week and I kind of been doing my own research and just thinking about this whole topic, it's been, I think one of the things that I think some people maybe forget to realize about the brain is it's not like it's kind of floating in your head, right? Like it's in that fluid, whatever it's called. I'm not too technical or scientific, but the brain is very, very fragile. So like when you get hit in the head, your brain like moves back and forth. It's banging against your skull, right? Like such a fragile thing. And I think some people maybe sometimes lose sight of that.
100%. And you don't have to get hit in the head to have a concussion either. Like any kind of whiplash as well, you get hit in the body.
True. Yeah.
You get still concussion from that. It's crazy. And even like soccer players, like I said, like just repeatedly heading the ball, there's not any specific time where you're like, you don't have to be knocked out to have a concussion. Like 90% of concussions don't happen. Like 90% of people don't go unconscious when they get a concussion, and people think that they need to be knocked out to have one. So it's another kind of myth that we need to debunk. It's crazy.
Did you, when you had your 3, call them official concussions and many that you kind of are unofficial, but the couple or few concussions you had, were your symptoms the same each time or were they different each time? Because concussion is one of those weird things I got to imagine where like, I want to say every concussion is almost unique in and of itself, the symptoms you get, or at least per person, what it is.
Yeah, they're completely different for everyone. Like Comer calls them snowflakes because they're completely different.
Yeah,
there's such a variety of symptoms. For me, it was kind of like the classic things that most people think about. It was like the headache, the light sensitivity. I mean, there was one time where I couldn't get undressed. Like I literally had to have my trainer like untie my skates and help me take off my stuff. I was pretty out of it.
And when you say you couldn't get undressed, was that like mentally you couldn't put it together, or like your body physically couldn't do it?
The lights were on, but nobody was home.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I was just completely out of it. But in terms of like the prolonged stuff, like within a couple of weeks, the headache kind of went away. The light sensitivity went away. I was pretty lucky from that perspective. But there's so many different symptoms and things that it can affect. Like we mentioned, obviously the classic one that everybody thinks about, and we've talked about hormones, but people can have vision problems, they can have hearing problems, gut issues. Like there's so many different things that concussions can bleed into.
Yeah. It's not just like how for you it was testosterone. That's not, of course, the only hormone that could be affected. I'm assuming things like serotonin or dopamine and stuff could be affected as well.
Yeah, like I'm not a doctor, so I don't know for sure, but I know that anything related to the pituitary gland can be affected. Yeah. So it's not just guys. Like estrogen in females can get all messed up, and same with growth hormone and all of that stuff as well. Yeah,
crazy stuff. Through I guess you beginning the head first movement, what was kind of your biggest takeaway that you've taken away from it, I guess, for lack of a better word, but what are some of your biggest takeaways from starting the brand? Either things you learned or talking to other people, things that you hadn't realized beforehand, because you had a pretty extensive experience, obviously seeing all these medical professionals and talking to them and stuff. But I got to imagine that there's new things that you kind of learn day by day, month by month by exploring this conversation with other people.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's a lot more common than we originally thought. More people are dealing with concussions and mental health issues than I ever would have imagined. And a lot of people do a really good job at hiding it. Sure. So when you can create that space and say that, I'm going through this, it allows other people to raise their hand as well. And that ripple effect is huge. So that's probably the biggest takeaway. The second biggest takeaway I'd say, and this is something that I've learned through a process of just kind of self-discovery and development over the course of 8 or 9 years working through my shit and now being on the other side of it, is that, when you can figure out who you are at your core and what's important to you, and you can really figure out like what's holding you back, it just allows you to really look at things objectively and decide whether or not, something is worth your time or is going to benefit you.
Yeah.
That goes for anything. It goes for your, recovery. But it also goes to like your work, your relationships, and everything else. It's when you can figure out who you are at your core and what's important, it makes a massive impact. Sorry, my phone's
It's all good.
friggin' spamming right now. I just kind of lost my train of thought. You edit these, right?
It's all good. It's all good. We'll keep this film as raw as possible here. We like to be authentic, I guess I would like to say it, eh? It's all good.
20 text messages, so I just kind of lost my train of thought.
I'm interested in, because it sounded like as towards the tail end of your time in hockey, your relationship with it kind of soured, your relationship with the sport, so to say. Where does your relationship with hockey stand now? Is it like patched up? Is it healed? Is it, you have a more healthy relationship with the sport, or what's that kind of like?
Yeah, so I'd say I've always had a healthy relationship with the sport. It was just me personally that it wasn't a good fit when I was dealing with my stuff. I don't want to blame hockey for a second for what I went through. Mm-hmm. We're all aware of the impact that contact sports can have, but hockey gave me so much. It allowed me to grow as a person. It allowed me to meet all of my best friends. It gave me so many opportunities. It allowed me to travel. It allowed me to do so much shit. So if I have kids, I'm going to encourage them to play. I'm back playing now. I'm just playing rec hockey, but I love the sport, and I don't want to talk negatively about that at all. It gave me so much, and my relationship's always been good with it. It's just when I was sick, I wasn't able to play.
Yeah. I think for some people that would be in a similar position like yourself, going through such a mental health issue as a result of concussions, that you experienced through hockey, they may look back at regret for like playing hockey, so to say, right? But you kind of touched on it a bit there that it kind of sounds like you don't have much regret about hockey, about playing it. Just walk me through a bit more about your mindset on that, like how you stop yourself from looking back with regret and kind of wondering, like, if I never played hockey, I would have never gone through this stuff.
I actually don't think I've wondered that once.
Yeah.
And, that might be kind of hard to realize for some other people, but like I said, the sport gave me so much opportunity and so many good things. And I mean, spending time in regret and kind of, dwelling over the past doesn't really do anything good for our mental health. So the more that you can let it go and kind of focus on the present and what's going on moving forward, I think the better shape you'll be in.
We talked a bit about like your concussions in hockey, but did you suffer any concussions in any other sports that you played? I know you mentioned that you played all the sports under the sun. Do you think that you had any concussions or anything stick out from your experiences with those sports?
I don't know about concussions. I mean, I played a ton of other stuff. I played a lot of soccer, so there might have been something there. There was never any like specific incident that I can remember in any other sport. I played rugby. I tore my ACL and separated both my shoulders there, but I'm sure I got dinged pretty good. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, so I got my bell rung pretty often, especially with kind of the chip on my shoulder that I played with. But there was never any like specific incident in another sport where I thought I had a concussion or I got treated for one.
Yeah. That actually probably makes, now I remember what I was going to ask before, or tell a bit of this experience. I never had a concussion myself personally, but I know two of my really close friends that have had concussions. And even my one friend, we were doing boxing together, training, sparring at the same time, and he was in the ring sparring, and all it took was just one punch. It wasn't even a hard punch. And that's the thing about concussions too, is it's not so much the velocity of the hit per se, but it's kind of like the precision of it. So he never really took a hard hit, but the precision of the hit that he took to his head was like so precise that he didn't get unconscious, but he was definitely out of it for a bit. And seeing him day by day, like he literally just had to like lock himself in his room, no lights on or anything. He was out of the gym for like 3 or 4 months, and he was actually training for his first fight, and he had to cancel that and scrap that. So that was my kind of firsthand experience with concussion, and seeing really not only the impact of the concussion itself, on somebody's mental health, like how the brain, how the changes in the brain function affects the mental health, but also it's taken away from you from time to do things that you really love. Like for him, it was boxing, right? And for you, the concussion took away your time to play hockey, things you love. So it's almost like a double whammy. And I think that's an important consideration as well for concussions is not only are you getting that mental health change because your brain is damaged, but because you're not able to do the things that you love.
Yeah. And it sucks too, because it's an invisible injury, right?
Yeah.
So when you're out with a concussion, it's different than when you're out with a broken leg. Like you can see a broken leg, but you can't see what's going on inside somebody's head.
Yeah.
Right? So sitting out, you always feel a ton of pressure because from the outside, it looks like you're completely fine. But it's a battle, and people need to make sure that they're going through the full process and making sure that they're going through the full protocol and making sure that they're 100% fit before they go back. Because if they go back too soon and they're putting pressure on themselves to do that, it can create, a situation that's completely worse.
And I think that's so relevant for athletes, especially as you get higher ranked athletes and elite athletes, because they're so competitive and every 1% of improving their performance counts, that they kind of, I think, I don't want to say that they look at things short-term to long-term, but I think they have the tendency to almost value things in the short term over long-term, like not to no fault of their own. That's just the way I think that how they're competitive. They want to get that 1% better every day, where if you think of an athlete, if they take 2 or 3 months off of training, they're set back so much, right? So they're kind of balancing, like, do I go back to training and kind of hide this concussion and these symptoms I'm having, or do I sit out for 2 or 3 months and not risk my body longer term? I mean, you see it so often in the NFL, where now it's a bit different, where they have the doctors on the sideline to like make sure that you're not BSing your symptoms with your concussion. But back in the day, how many players talk about, and probably all sports as well, but football is an example, where guys would just hide the symptoms they have because they want to go back out there and compete.
And they also want to get paid.
That's true. Yeah.
Like we haven't even talked about money, but think about how many people go back early because they want to be paid, or because they are relying on that spot on their team to, sustain their family and to like live that's their job. So, especially when you climb the ladder in sports, it creates a really interesting dynamic because, especially for players that, aren't the best player on the team, if they're not back in the lineup, they're jeopardizing their spot.
Yeah.
So people need to be really mindful of that. But the thing is like, if you're rushing your concussion recovery to get back in and you get hit again, like you're screwing yourself for the long term. Mm-hmm. So I'd encourage people listening that if they're in that situation to really think about it before they put themselves back in the game too early and, kind of set themselves up for failure, because it's definitely not worth it.
Yeah, it's definitely when you look at things from more of a bird's eye view, top down, taking 1 month off or 2 months off is a lot better than pushing through those 2 months and having to take 3 years off, for example, right? In the long term, it's all about getting the right recovery. And I know for you had a very, I don't want to call it unique. To me, it was unexpected way to treat your concussions with TRT. Like that's, to me, I never would have pictured that. Through you and your discussions with people around the world about concussions and everything, what has been the more like enlightening treatment options for concussions that you maybe had never thought of before that you've really come to learn about right now?
I think the biggest thing is lifestyle changes. Like now when people hear my story and then link it to whatever's going on in their life, whether they're dealing with depression, anxiety, or something. Mm-hmm. And because they see my story, they automatically think that they have exactly what I had. Right. And I'd encourage people to not do that and to get their blood work done and to not jump to conclusions. But I do think that's something that like lifestyle changes can move the needle for a lot of people. So, I always think physiology first, right? Like think about how you feel if you're not sleeping, right? Like one night can, you're kind of tired. 2 nights, you can deal with it, but you're slugging coffee, but think about what happens to your body when you're not sleeping for weeks on end, right? Or when you're when you're putting shit in your body, right? Like if you're not eating properly, your body just isn't able to recover and do the things that it needs to do. And you just all of a sudden kind of get used to it, and you get used to feeling like shit. And that's kind of like your new normal. So the biggest thing is honestly just like lifestyle changes. It's just doing the right things. It's getting sleep. It's putting good things in your body. It's hydrating. It's moving. And I think those things are the most underrated things. Like people are always looking for that, that magic pill or that special treatment or this, specialist that they're magically going to get into. when 9 times out of 10 things can be, they can move the needle with simple lifestyle changes and just prioritizing their mental health and their physical health, and going physiology first. That's always kind of the answer that I kind of have.
Yeah.
And, even if that's not going to address everything, it's definitely going to move the needle, and it's something that we all have control over. So whether, like, you might have to wait 6 months to go in to see the right guy, but there are always things that you can do right now to start to feel better.
Yeah. Thinking back to what your lifestyle was like before you had these really severe and intense symptoms, what are the biggest changes to your lifestyle? I guess I want to call it pre really bad concussions and present day right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was playing hockey, we were partying every weekend. I was in university. I was eating kind of whatever. I didn't really pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Sleep wasn't a priority. I was in an economics program, so I was studying hard, and, I was playing hockey on the weekends and drinking, and, I treated my body like shit. Yeah. And even when I was going through that stuff, like I said, I used alcohol as a crutch to deal with a lot of the stuff that I was going through. So, my body I didn't treat my body with respect for that 3.5, 4 years.
Right.
I think everything that I went through was just amplified and magnified because of it. Now that I'm in a much better place, I've taken a lot of interest in that stuff. So from like a nutrition standpoint, I hired a Neuro Nutritionist. His name is Chet Binning. He's got a company called Brain Ignition. He literally specializes in nutrition to help people's brains perform optimally and to perform at a higher level. So working with him has been an absolute game changer. I've really focused on sleep. I think that's a huge thing. It's underrated by a lot of people, but getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night makes a huge difference, not only to like your energy levels, but like your mood in general,
yeah,
and your productivity and your ability to think. From an exercise standpoint, like just moving my body, I've always been in the gym and interested in fitness, but now that I'm not boozing 3 or 4 times a week, the impact of that is huge. And I've also found ways to move my body that I actually enjoy. So I used to train, specifically for hockey, and that was great. But now I've been able to do a bunch of other things that that allow me to move in different ways that I actually enjoy. And it's made the process a lot. I just look forward to it more.
Yeah.
And then even from like a supplementation standpoint, like I'm just taking all the right shit. And then, I guess we spoke about this briefly, but I started microdosing as well, with psilocybin or magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm taking a gram every morning like I would if you're going to like a concert, but I'm taking about 10% of that. And I've been doing that for about the last 6 weeks now. And it's honestly been incredible. So it helps you. I'd say the biggest benefit, you're just more present. You're more focused. Everything just seems a little bit brighter and a little bit clearer. And everything just seems a little bit better. That's kind of like the only way I can describe it. But I mean, in terms of like how I take care of my health now, it's my number one priority. It's the most important thing that we have.
It's crazy how like everybody obviously has their genetic makeup and who they are, their bone structure, their joint structure, whatever, their brain size, whatever it is. All these things are predetermined, but it's crazy how much, especially diet, can play a role. Like just the foods you put in your body and the nutrients that it gives your body to absorb and helps feed your brain and everything. It always blows my mind just how much a person can change their day-to-day mood, their day-to-day energy level, whatever it may be, just by changing what they put inside their body. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I think a fundamental understanding of nutrition and like macros is massive. People are overweight and they want to lose some weight sustainably, but they don't have an understanding of like what is actually in their foods from like a macronutrient breakdown. So, I just watch people struggle with that, and it's huge. It plays a huge impact on your mental health, right? Like my dad, he's wanted to lose weight forever, but he doesn't understand what's in his food. So, he's eating handfuls of nuts and like just like crushing like 800 calorie snacks doing that. And he's not able to lose the weight, which obviously impacts the way he feels about it.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. It's
when I was, I'm a little bit more relaxed with my nutrition right now, but when I was into powerlifting, I did IIFYM. Have you heard of that? If it fits your macros. Yeah.
Whatever.
I kind of learned quickly that 60 grams of Pop-Tarts is different than 60 grams of whole wheat pasta or whatever it may be. But I think it speaks to the point that that basic level of nutrition is so integral to people to live the best life or the most happy life, I guess they can. And I think another important consideration too is I told myself I would stop saying quotes on this podcast because I always forget the exact words, but it's like closing the barn door after the horse gets out of it or something like that. And I'm thinking the thing like, if somebody is listening to this and they're like, oh, I never had a concussion yet, so maybe I don't need to change my lifestyle just yet. There's probably value in actually taking a more proactive approach to these things before you get a concussion or before you have other injuries to your brain, rather than a reactive approach where waiting for these things to happen and then making that change your lifestyle. And I got to imagine that if people change their lifestyle and live a more healthy lifestyle day to day, when they if they eventually get something like a concussion, it'll be easier for their body to recover from it, or at least easier for them to do the things necessary in order to recover from the concussion.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And like I said before, your sleep, your nutrition, the way that you move your body are all things that you can control.
Yeah.
So when you get those in order, it just, it's huge. It's there's no other way to say it. It's just, it's huge.
Sleep is a crazy thing because I've read some places that there's like, that it's possible to oversleep in a sense. That kind of blew my mind as well, because I always thought like, it's like your body, treat it like a battery sort of thing. And as you sleep, it like charges up the battery and 100%. Like when you plug your phone in to charge it, once it hits 100%, there's like no real negative impact of keeping it plugged in. But I've read a lot of articles that oversleeping can actually be detrimental to the body. I don't know the specific reasons why. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. But the point I wanted to get across was when somebody's making these a transition to a more healthy lifestyle, like they want to eat better, they want to sleep more, so on and so forth, they want to be more active. I think it takes a real trial and error approach to try things out on your own and see what's the best combination of things for that person. Because 7 or 8 hours of sleep may be enough for you, but for somebody else, it could be 10. For somebody else, it could be 6, right? It's all about finding that optimal balance for your body.
Yeah, 100%. And another thing I'd want to add to that is, it's very difficult to implement a number of changes at once. If you're trying to go from 0 to 100 really quick, it's not going to work. You're just going to spin your wheels. Yeah. So I'd encourage people to figure out the 1 or 2 habits in the beginning that are going to move the needle the most, get those done, and then begin to stack other things. And I'm a firm believer that, you don't have to start running 10 miles a day or start specifically sleeping 8 hours or counting your macros or whatever. Just start small and create momentum. And the more momentum you can create, the more it will exponentially grow as you get going.
Yeah. And I 2 things I want to say on that. The first one is I've come across so many cool apps out there too that I think would be helpful for a lot of people to kind of help themselves keep on track. It kind of takes away a lot of the organization or tracking out of the way. You just kind of click a box and it'll show your progress as well throughout the week. And the second thing is one thing that talking to other athletes as well that I've found to be quite prevalent in them, for them to keep themselves accountable for doing their habits or daily goals, whatever it may be, is public posting, whether it's posting on your Instagram that you're doing something or telling a friend or a family member that you're going to be making this change. I think it kind of adds that level of accountability and you'll be less likely to give up because you're not only letting yourself down, but you're letting another person down as well.
It's huge. I mean, I could talk about habits all day, but those are 2 tracking and accountability are 2 huge ways to move the needle from that standpoint.
Yeah. What are some of your I guess after your concussion, your recovery and everything, do a couple habits stick out that you kind of like implemented right away that really help fast track your recovery?
So aside from the things that we've already talked about, I found that journaling is huge. So just being able
crazy how many people I talk to that journal.
Yeah. So just being able to literally dump my thoughts onto a piece of paper and organize them is massive. And it also gives me the opportunity to check in with myself. So if I am feeling like shit, I write it down and then I can work through why I'm feeling that way. A lot of people can identify how they're feeling, but very few people ask why. And the ability to put that onto a piece of paper really allows you to figure out what's going on. And it allows you to kind of check in with your intentions as to like why or why not you're doing something and why not you're feeling a certain way.
Yeah.
So journaling has been massive for me. And then, from like a goal setting perspective, it's crazy what writing down the things you want to accomplish every day does.
Yeah.
Just like it's crazy how powerful that is. Aside from journaling, I've adopted like a mindfulness practice as well. So I'm a firm believer that you don't need to wear a robe and live up in the mountains and close your eyes and meditate for 3 hours a day to have it be effective.
Mm-hmm.
It started really small. It started with, just focusing on my breath for 30 seconds or a minute. And it slowly turned into a 5 or 10 minute a day thing. But just having that ability to identify my thoughts when they come up and separate them from myself and objectively take a look and be able to flip the negative ones has been massive, because there's a lot of times in your recovery where you're doubting yourself. And just being able to recognize that those negative thoughts or limiting beliefs are completely separate from you. And you've got the power to nip them in the ass and flip them right away. And then when you can understand what those empowering beliefs can bring to the table and project that out, it really makes you a little bit more excited to go ahead with it. Mm-hmm. And so mindfulness is huge. And it's not complicated. Like people think they need to have some elaborate plan or take half an hour of their day to do it. Pay attention to your hands and the water when you're washing the dishes. Go for a walk and just like genuinely go for a walk. Don't look at your phone. Like just genuinely enjoy your time out there.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I saw a video the other day. I think Connor Carrick put it on his Instagram profile, or I saw a couple of days ago, but he posted a couple months ago, but he posted like a breathing kind of exercise technique thing. And it was literally only like 10 or 11 minutes. So when you think of the grand scheme in your days, and when you really get to understand how important breathing is, like my cousin is huge into mindfulness and breathing techniques and stuff. And he was telling me like how the different oxygen levels that you're taking it in and holding your breath for a certain time and everything, how much of an impact it can have on your body. Like in the grand scheme of things, taking 10 minutes out of your day to do that, the value you can get out of that 10 minutes is like exponentially greater than that time.
And we all have 10 minutes. Like if you don't have 10 minutes, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
Right. Like people need to realize that they can carve out time for themselves. And if they think they can't, there's a lot of other stuff going on that they need to cut out.
Yeah.
So that's something that, over the course of the last year, I've had a lot of conversations with people, and they always tell me they're too busy to do the right things. And I'm very quickly to call them out on it, because we all have the exact same amount of time. I know that's kind of cliche, but it's very important for us to take time out of our day and prioritize our own self-care. And I'm a firm believer that that's the most selfless thing that you can do. When you're able to be at your best and to make sure that you're healthy and in control of your thoughts, it's going to bleed out everywhere else. And if you're not taking that time, you can basically end up as a liability and drag people around you down. I think it's super important that people do take that time.
Yeah, it's all about auditing your kind of 24 hours in a day, right? And I think it'll be such a powerful exercise for people to do if they feel like they're too busy to fit in an extra habit or whatever. It may sound like a lot of work, but like kind of like every 15 minutes or half an hour as you're awake, write down what you did at that exact time. And you'll see like from 8 a.m., for example, to like 11 p.m., you can have a roadmap of all the things you did in your day. And I'm sure a lot of people will be surprised, like how many times they're writing down video games, Netflix, Instagram, whatever it may be, right? And those things, like if that makes you happy and you're okay with that, like all the power to you type of thing. But if you're looking to make change, that's a real easy way to audit yourself and be like, okay, I can actually fit this stuff in if I take out this thing that I don't want to do.
I'd encourage people right now to check their screen time on their phone, because I guarantee you're spending way more time on Instagram and other apps than you think.
Yeah.
It's insane. We all have the same, like we all have time.
If I showed you my screen time, you probably scream right out of your house. As I was trying to grow my brand on Instagram, the amount of time I spend on Instagram, but that's an example of like, I'm on Instagram to build a brand, to build the podcast, to connect with people. Like there's an intention behind it. I'm not on it on the explore page, whatever, just scrolling through meaningless posts type of thing.
Yeah. And that's actually something that we get into in the Head to Heart program. Like we'll take an internal audit, the things that you think, do, and say, and that make you feel like shit and make you feel good. And a lot of the times it's the same things on both sides of the equation, right? Like cell phone can be destructive, but it can also be a very powerful tool. So it's just being able to like recognize like what situations are, not serving you and which ones are, and then being able to be mindful of it and snap out of it. And being able to stack habits and break negative behaviors and patterns that you get into without even thinking about it. It's huge.
I think everything not everything, most things in life have a good and bad side to it. Like you said, it's just all about how you use it. Like we mentioned a lot of social media, like there's a good way to use it and a bad way to use it. And I think I really like how you kind of had that exercise there of writing down good ways you can use it and the bad ways you can do it, because I think there's a perception out there of people that if they think of something bad and then they just don't use it at all, right? Their perspective of it is completely wrong. And I encourage people to always look at the good side of things and the useful side of things as well, because I guess another way to put it is too much of anything is a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say the biggest thing too is just to check in with your intention. Ask yourself why you're doing it. Nothing's necessarily good or bad, right? Like we all need times to be entertained and we all need times to, be productive and do whatever else, but we need to check in with our intentions and make sure that whatever we're doing is in alignment with our core. And if it's not, then we need to either stop doing it or create boundaries so whatever we're getting into actually serves us.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, man, before I wrap up here, I want to play the little sports psychology quote game that I got here. I think it'd be interesting if someone from your perspective and your experiences to hear some of these quotes. I have 23 of them. We won't go through all 23, of course, but I'll let you pick a number between 1 and 23, and I'll read you the quote, and then just tell me what this quote means to you as you reflect on the journey you've gone through and your personal development you've gone through the past 3 or 4 years.
Cool. Let's do my hockey number 16.
16. Nice. This is from Vince Lombardi. Everybody knows, legendary NFL coach. Mm-hmm. He said, if you can't accept losing, you can't win.
Yeah. I mean, that's where you learn, right? Like that's where you learn to grow. When you fuck up, that's how you get better. So, I mean, that's huge. We can't win at everything. We're always going to fail. And I view failure as an opportunity. Like challenge is an opportunity. Failure is just a stepping stone. And I know that's kind of a cliche thing, but, even getting started with the brand, and I'm sure you've experienced with this with your podcast, like you got to eat a little bit of shit, right? Yeah. Things aren't going to go as you expect it as it to all the time. And, you got to start somewhere, and falling on your head and, not having things not go the way that you expected is the only way that you're going to learn and get better. So I genuinely really like that quote.
Yeah. And I think another like an important perspective for people to take in is every loss that you get brings you closer to the next win. Like for you yourself, I'm thinking back of your story and how you described over 3 years and visiting 30 medical professionals. Like I think a lot of people could just kind of give up. And I don't know what your state of mind was, if you were thinking about giving up or other people were pushing you to push forward, or you were still motivated during that time to get better. But every time that you went to somewhere and they tested something for you, it ended up not being the answer. Yes, that's not the answer and it's frustrating, but it also gets you closer to the right answer, right?
So yeah, exactly. It's just trial and error and process of elimination. That's it.
Yeah. Let's do one more here then before we wrap up. Another number between 1 and 23.
Let's do 10.
10. This is an interesting one, and I would like your perspective on this. Probably from a hockey player would be pretty cool. But this is from Steffi Graf, legendary German women's tennis player. She said, "Sometimes I wish I could have been a bit more relaxed, but then I wouldn't have been the same player."
Sometimes I wish I could have been a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so on the other side of the coin, so after I found the answer to my concussion mental health issue, I built an e-commerce company, and I spent 3 years grinding my face off, doing nothing else other than that. And I sacrificed every other area of my life. And when things started to get better is when I took a step back and relaxed a little bit more and started to have fun. And, that's when everything really started to change. So I think that kind of is in alignment with that quote. I'm not.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. She said, yeah, sometimes I wish I could have been more relaxed, but then I wouldn't have been the same player. So I think she's talking a bit about like,
she's saying
the opposite. Yeah. So like it almost doesn't want to be too relaxed.
Mm-hmm. True.
Which is more controversial. Like I said, this quote a bunch, and it's been pretty controversial because a lot of people strive for relaxation, right? I think a lot of athletes and people in general, they live their life in a state of, I don't want to say heightened anxiety, but above average anxiety than what's healthy or what's normal. And so they're always looking to relax. But I got to imagine for some people, they have the opposite problem where they're too relaxed and they're too kind of nonchalant with their stuff. And they need to almost increase their anxiety a bit to get that kind of flow state of optimal performance, so to say.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the one thing that drives me nuts is when people want to focus on balance. They always want everything to be equal, and they don't want to spend too much time doing one thing or, um, going out of balance anywhere specific in their life. But I think that real growth comes from dialing in on something and going at it full tilt. And that's when you really kind of push yourself and learn from it. I'm just kind of like sitting here in this middle zone, this gray area. You got to kind of get outside of your comfort zone and push yourself to really learn and to grow. And there'll be times when you can focus on the other things to move the needle there. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't want to be too cliche, but I want to say it's probably impossible to accomplish any of your goals without getting a little bit uncomfortable.
100%.
Yeah.
How would you like your life? Like, how would you like to know everything about your life? Right. Like literally, how would you like to like read the book and like know exactly what everything's going to be like? Right? Like I think uncertainty that's what makes life exciting. And the only way that you're going to be able to experience it is by pushing yourself.
Yeah. Uncertainty and spontaneity as well. Like if somebody had a what is it called? A blue map? I forget what that term is called. This is why I don't say quotes or anything like that. Blueprint is what I'm thinking of. A blueprint. If someone had a blueprint for the rest of their life, they would almost feel like this is the way my life is. Like I'll just kind of go along with it and maybe not have the mindset of like, I can actually change this. I can actually change that. I think it's always important for people to have long-term goals, but also don't be afraid to kind of switch up what your long-term goals are as well as your interests change, as your values change, because day to day, you're coming into contact with new people, you're learning about new experiences, preferences that you had have changed, things you didn't like, now you like it. Like it's okay to have long-term goals, and it's also okay to change what those are as well as you begin to grow and develop as a person.
100%. Even with the head first thing, I've pivoted and changed direction. It seems times, but without doing that, I wouldn't have got to the spot where I am now. So I think it's super important for people to understand.
Perfect, man. I think that's a great point to end this off on, man. I appreciate your time coming on the podcast and sharing your story and a bit about the link between concussions and mental health and the importance of just living an overall healthy lifestyle. I think is such an important topic I think everybody can relate to that in some way.
100%.
And for those that are that want to learn more, can you drop your Instagram tagline or your handle or whatever?
Yeah, so it's head first movement. Instead of FIRST, it's 1ST.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where you can find me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyways, Cody, man, appreciate your time again, man, and we'll have to do this again soon.
Thanks for having me, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Cool.
Thank you.